If you've clicked on this video, you're probably a little curious about what getting better at golf actually looks like. Obviously, the scores you're shooting are the true litmus test of if you're getting better, but I think a lot of golfers don't actually know what the next level looks like, and it holds them back. But I've been carefully observing golfers for decades now, whether they're beginners all the way up through the PGA Tour, and I've seen the transformation in my game. And in this video, I'm gonna share what's common amongst all those players that are getting better. Hopefully it's gonna give you a little nugget of an idea or reaffirm that you're heading in the right direction. Just in case you don't know me, my name is Jon Sherman. I'm the author of The 4 Foundations of Golf, co-host of the Sweet Spot podcast, and PGA Tour coach. But most importantly, I'm a golfer just like you. Here are 7 signs that you're getting better at golf. Here's the first sign you're getting better at golf. You're finishing more rounds with the same golf ball. And of course, this is a reference to big foul balls off the tee. If you follow me, you know that I constantly talk about the relationship between double bogeys and birdies. And if you pick any handicap level that you want to get to, it's not going to be through more birdies. It's going to be less double bogeys and worse. And I had my buddy Mike Hutchinson, who is a data scientist at Arcos Golf, look at their database to see where most double bogeys come from. They've got hundreds of millions of golf shots at this point. And it was quite clear. The #1 leading cause of double bogeys for a golfer at any level was big misses off the tee. So the 2 primary reasons or impact conditions that result in these big foul balls off the tee are poor face control. A golfer has the face way too open or closed at impact, and that's where you get those big blocks or pulls. But the other thing with our driver that we have to worry about is impact location. So if you're striking it on the toe or heel of the club, that actually can make it hook or slice more in addition to where the face is pointing, which is why I always tell you to track your impact location. So I struggled massively with foul balls off the tee for years, and it was really the main thing that held me back in my game. And I worked really hard on it for a good 3 or 4 years to get more control over the face and impact location. I share some of my practice methods in this huge PDF and video. The link's in the description to this video so you can get it for free. But I would say for most golfers, the real sign you're getting better is that your driver is becoming your best friend. It's becoming one of the most important clubs in your bag. I've been fortunate at this point to play in a lot of tournaments with great golfers plus handicap levels. The one thing I see is that they all embrace their driver and use it as much as possible. And I don't want you to think that you have to hit it 300 yards, but when you get more comfortable and know you can keep your driver in play more often, again, you're gonna make this game so much easier, and it's a true sign that you're becoming better at golf. The second sign you're getting better at this game, your greens in regulation are going up. Most traditional stats like fairways hit or putts per round, on their own, they're pretty much useless. I was actually reviewing the ShotScope database this morning, and if you look at fairways hit from a scratch golfer to a 15 handicap, it only went from 52% to 46%. So on the surface, it's not really telling you much. And the same thing with putts per round. If you told me you had 32 putts or 28, I really don't have enough information on how well you putt because I don't know the starting distance of those putts. So that's why strokes gained is a better statistic for putting performance. But when we look at greens in regulation, it's really the only traditional stat that correlates with scoring. And it's one that I really like golfers to hang their hat on. We were interviewing Mark Brody on our podcast a few years ago, The Sweet Spot. I was talking with Mark about traditional stats versus, of course, his stat, strokes gained, which has obviously changed the golf world. And I told him why I liked greens in regulation so much. And he kind of disagreed with me a little bit. And he said, well, why don't you just tell me what you shot? And what he meant by that is that it's so correlated with scoring, you almost can't separate the two. Build your game around hitting more greens in regulation. Something I've done over the last decade. And it really means a few things. Obviously, you want to hit more greens. That's the obvious part, but it has strategic implications. It has practice implications. You can only hit more greens if you're keeping the ball in play off the tee. When you're with your irons and approach clubs, are you selecting good targets? I would argue that most players need to be far more conservative with approach play than off the tee and trying to aim at the meat of the green and taking enough club. So to me, this is one of the biggest signs of progress. If you were someone who was hitting only 3 or 4 greens in regulation per round and you were laser focused on getting that number higher, you're gonna figure out a way to pick better targets and practice effectively to get to that goal. And when you do, your scores will drop. Here's the third sign that you're getting better at golf. You're being kinder to yourself. No matter how good you get at this game, there's gonna be so many mistakes that you make during a round where you're missing 5-foot putts, you might chunk an approach shot or hit your driver way left. I don't need to tell you how frustrating this game can be at times because you experience it every round you play. But the one common thread that that unfortunately unites most of us is that golfers love to beat ourselves up on the course. We have a ton of negative self-talk. We love to focus on the shots that don't work out versus giving ourselves credit for the ones that do. And more importantly, I think a lot of players don't even know what good shots are for their skill levels. So I think the one trait that I notice in my own game and the transformation over the years, and more importantly, witnessing other golfers, is that they're able to put these mistakes behind them rather quickly. They're able to kind of ask a question or analyze it and then just move on to the next one. I remember a quote from Jack Nicklaus. He said that you need to have the ability to laugh at yourself at times. And I try and do this as much as possible, because the second option of getting angry at myself, I know is just not productive to reach the goals that I want in my game. It really plays out even at the highest levels of golf. For the past couple of seasons, I've been working with Mackenzie Hughes on the PGA Tour. And one of the reasons he came to me was that he was in a really terrible rut for about 6 months. There was a lot of negative self-talk on the course, but he knew at that point that he needed some type of reset in his game. And that's when we started talking. And what we've tried to do over the last couple of years is mainly change his attitude and the way he looks at his game. I cannot stress how transformational this has been for him. In 2024, he had one of his most consistent seasons ever. He only missed 4 cuts. The point I'm trying to make is that no matter how good you get at this game, your expectations will rise. And with that, you need to figure out a way to be patient and kinder to yourself on the golf course. If the golf course and the game is hard enough, I don't need another opponent and me telling myself that I'm not good enough. It's just not productive. Here's the 4th sign that you're becoming a better golfer. You have a process, and this can mean so many different things. If you're a golfer who, instead of just stepping up to each shot and winging it, you have a system to pick targets, you have a routine to go through, you're absorbing the right feedback after every shot, and it doesn't need to be terribly complicated and you're on the course being overly analytical and thinking about numbers all the time. I'll give you a few examples of what I think a good process looks like for a player of any level. The easiest one is having a basic strategic plan before you even step on the golf course. So whether it's your home club that you play a lot or a course you've never played for the first time, can you do a little bit of homework on the course and plan out your tee shot targets and what clubs you're gonna choose, and just have a basic understanding of the golf course you're gonna face. I give you a really detailed way to do that in one of the chapters in my book, The 4 Foundations of Golf. Another way to have a process on the course is just having a basic routine. And when I say the word pre-shot routine, I don't want people to think that they need to spend 2 minutes over the golf ball. Longer is definitely not better, but just having some system to pick your target, establish an intention, some type of physical rehearsal. Are you taking 1 or 2 practice swings? And then a very similar timing to how you get into the ball, and more importantly, when you pull the trigger. So having this basic process, I like to think of it as more of a security blanket, so that when I'm under tremendous pressure in a tournament, I can kind of press this little autopilot button and go through my routine, and I feel comfortable because it's something I do all the time when I practice or when I'm on the course. Another great way to have a process is what I would call redirecting your thoughts. So every time you play, there's going to be a stretch of holes or even the entire round where you feel like things are not going your way. I like to have some thoughts that I can go to kind of redirect my mind. You know, humans are not really great at multitasking. We can really only think of one thing at a time. Some ways that I redirect my mind is that I just kind of gaze off into the distance and stare at the trees or the way the wind is hitting it, or honestly just the beauty of the golf course. And I'm just trying to focus on the environment rather than worrying about my score or the shot I just hit. I might start talking with my playing partners. These can be my buddies in fun rounds or even people I'm competing with in tournaments. It makes the round more enjoyable. And again, it diverts your mind from some of those negative thoughts. Other times, if I'm on the putting green, I'm kind of running through some songs in my head to distract myself, not think about my putting stroke or worrying about missing a putt. So we all have to develop this little mental system where, again, we can redirect our mind to a more productive place. If you do want to become a better golfer, you do have to learn how to think your way around the course and develop that golf IQ. And the last example of a process that I think is super beneficial to every golfer is just having some type of post-round routine. Reviewing your shots, you're thinking about what made you uncomfortable, you're thinking about the shots that were good and kind of internalizing those and reliving them in your mind. There's so much feedback that you have to draw out of your rounds and then hopefully use them in your practice sessions and future rounds, and you don't want to let that information disappear. But again, having that process after every time you play will make you a better and stronger player. The 5th sign you're becoming a better golfer, you have a long-term view. Golf is so similar to investing in the stock market. There's an incredible amount of short-term volatility. This game throws so much volatility at us, whether it's on a hole-by-hole basis or even over a period of weeks where you're just kind of down on your game. And it's really hard to pull yourself out of those moments and have that long-term view, but the golfers who can do it more often are the better players. So an example of this is the common golfer who's working all week and they're looking forward to their round on Saturday morning with their friends, and they have these visions of how they're gonna play and how it's gonna work out. And let's say the first 4 or 5 holes don't work out the way you want them to. That short-term disruption can have you just give up for the day and say, you know what, this is a terrible day, I'm not gonna have fun, I give up. And to be honest with you, I used to do this a lot and I really regret it. So I think one of the superpowers that a golfer needs to develop is to pull themselves out of these moments and take that 40,000 foot view of the game and say, hey, I just had a bad 9 holes, I just had a bad stretch of 3 or 4 rounds, and know that that's incredibly normal and a short-term disruption. But I can tell you with absolute certainty, the golfers that I've admired and learned from have a much longer term view on their game, and they're able to look past these short-term disruptions. Number 6, your practice sessions have intent. I know everyone gets incredibly frustrated when they spend time on the range and then that work doesn't translate to the course. And I always keep coming back to this word intent. Are you showing up to the range and just telling yourself, well, if I put 45 minutes in, I'm entitled to become a better golfer? I used to do this when I was a teenager. I would spend hours at the range just thinking, well, if I show up, I'm entitled to get better. And what I didn't understand was that how I practice was really the most important piece of the puzzle, not how long I did it. So what does intent look like? I'll give you a few basic examples. So if you're doing a more blocked, repetitive form of practice, do you have a target? That's number one. A lot of people are just hitting balls over there and they don't really have a specific target picked out. Having a shot intention, going through a routine. I think when you practice, it's so important to line up to the ball as you would on the golf course, rather than just staying in the same spot and raking balls to you. That's a very basic form of intent that I think people overlook. And probably most important is the feedback you're absorbing. How did you strike it on the club face? Which direction did the ball start? How did it curve through the air? And most importantly, where did the ball finish relative to your target? Anyone who's good at practice is absorbing all of this and making adjustments or experimenting when they need to. And if you're not paying attention to all of this and you don't have intent, you're just removing the chance that you're gonna improve your skills and, more importantly, bring them to the actual golf course. Other forms of intent can be performance games. I'm involved in a great app called Tee Time Trainer. Myself and Ted Scott have designed a lot of its features, and it's like a video game where you're challenging yourself to get better each time. Another form of intent would be hitting random targets and changing clubs, or doing experimental practice, which I spoke about in my last video. So there's so many different examples of intent while you practice. But again, if you're heading in the right direction, you're showing up to the range with some type of plan and you're making that time valuable. And my last sign that you're becoming a better golfer is possibly the most important one to me. You're being grateful that you get to play golf. Of course, we all want to shoot lower scores. That is the point of this game, but there's other reasons why we play. But I think becoming a better golfer and a successful golfer doesn't always have to be about your score. For far too long, I equated my satisfaction in golf with my handicap level, and it was a really slippery slope and kind of ruined my enjoyment of the game. And I started noticing the golfers that I admired the most were the ones who were just kind of grateful and happy to be out there. And one thing that I always try and remind myself and others is that if you get to play golf regularly, things are going pretty well for you in life if you take a big step backwards. There's something so special about the experience. I'm not looking at my phone as much. I love to walk the course, so I'm getting exercise. I'm spending time with friends. As you get older and busier in life and you have a family, it's really hard to spend 3, 4, or 5 hours with some of your buddies, but golf gives us that opportunity. I always want to check in with myself and make sure that I'm actually recognizing I'm grateful that I get to do this. And it's a special game and it's a special experience, and I never really want to lose sight of that. And I try and remind everyone else of that at times, because I think we can easily look past it. This game kind of draws us into thinking about results only, and we forget about probably the most important thing. Obviously, I'm trying to help everyone solve the puzzle of scoring, but I think the true sign of success in this game is that no matter what's happening, you're grateful that you actually get to do it. Thanks for spending time with me. Your attention means a lot, and don't miss my last video where I show you how experimental practice can take your ball striking to the next level.